morning, everybody. We're talking baseball. Yes, we'll be talking baseball real soon. We got the World Baseball Classic coming up and a lot of other interesting news to catch everybody up on. Well, with that particular said, glad to be brought in with my Saturday crew. We got Eric Katz in the house.
Yep, good to be here, Scott.
And we have Candy Ebling as well.
Glad to be here, Scott.
And we have Tony, obviously. Thanks for your participation in the chat room earlier in the football show. Glad to have you.
Yes,
and one of my favorite people of all time, Stuart Hack. Glad to have you. He'll talk a lot of Mets and then some. So let's get this show going. Obviously, we have about an hour, a little over an hour to get everything out. I see no reason why we can't do it. And we'll get it going with this. Gleyber Torres accepted the Detroit Tigers qualifying offer, and he will remain with the team. It's a 1 year, $22 million qualifying offer. Your thoughts, Eric, about Gleyber Torres staying with the Tigers after they picked him up from the Yankees a year prior?
It was a smart move. He had an okay year last year. I mean, he had some injury problems along the way as well. But it was a good move by Gleyber's part because I didn't think he'd get a deal better than that on the free agent market. And the Tigers get themselves a decent bat in the lineup. I mean, he had like with the Yankees, he had times where he's looking like a stud, and then other times where he's having a hard time getting on base. So, but it's good move by Gleyber's part, and the Tigers get themselves, a decent bat in the lineup.
Candy,
he's coming. He had a sports hernia surgery on October 31st, so he's coming off that. I think it was good for him to sign the qualifying offer and remain with the team. I always like to see guys that stay with the team as long as the team can afford them, and they put up an offer that they're all happy with. So always good to see someone stay with the team.
Yeah, no question. He's a steady bat, solid defensive player, and he doesn't strike out a lot. He gets a lot of quality at bats, don't he?
Yeah, 22 million reasons why it's a good deal for Gleyber Torres, and it was a kind of bounce back year in a sense for Gleyber. He went up 1 point on his WAR, batted an extra home run, 11 more RBIs, and he had 25 less strikeouts, Scott. So you're right, he was a lot better at his at bats last year. So I think it's good, like you said, steady at bat. $22 million ain't bad, and I agree, Eric. I don't think he's getting that in free agency at all. So, so yeah, this is great, a win-win for both sides.
Stuart.
So I guess the question is, I don't think he's would have gotten more than that free agency. I agree with that. If he were to go for a 3-year contract, what do you think he would get per year? Because what you're seeing now, he could sign a 3-year and then after the first year opt out if he has a really good first year. He can gamble on himself. There are a lot of opening things here, a lot of missing parts. Like we don't even know if there's going to be baseball in 2027. But I almost, I'm sure his agent advised him, take, on a 1 year, he's not getting more than 22 million. But if he could have gotten, say, a 3-year, which gives him a little bit more security at 55 million, with maybe an option to opt out after the first year or so. So if he has a really great year and now he figures out I'm worth this and I can get another contract, maybe that would have been another option. But I'm sure he was advised that the 1 year, just take the 22 million was the best.
And that'll be the tricky part about 1 year deals this year because you don't know the uncertainty of 2027. I'm glad you brought that up, Stuart. All right, we're going to go to talk about some New York Mets baseball. JP Arancibia, a guy who actually was a commentator for the Marlins, is a former bench coach of the AAA Mets, was actually promoted to a catching coach for the Mets. What are your thoughts about JP Arancibia, Stuart? We'll start off with you since it's a Mets topic in general. What do you think he can actually bring to the Mets, especially now that he's at the big league level? Because he was a bench coach of the AAA team last year, and obviously he got promoted to the big leagues.
I'm going to start off being that get off the lawn guy. Back in my day, there were no catching coaches. Jerry Grody never needed a catching coach. Okay. Gary Carter never needed a catching coach. So I've heard in his case, he's done really well in the minor leagues, coaching the young players there. It seems kind of to me like a specialized job for him. Just dealing with the catchers, and on the major league level, you're going to have 2, maybe 3 guys that you're basically working with. I don't know if they're going to give him anything else to do, but I guess if he can help out, then more power.
Well, the way I look at it, when you start off as a bench coach at AAA, it almost said, and then you get into a catching coach. I almost get the feeling that this guy could be managerial material within a matter of years because everybody knows the intellect of the actual catchers themselves in terms of making them great managers. So it's almost like a progression you have here. That when you begin as a bench coach, a catching coach, because we all know catchers make good managers, or many of them do. So, but yeah, Jerry Grody's certainly a name that could have been one. And Gary Carter, we all know what a heck of a catcher he was. We'll transition over to Tony.
Yeah, was a solid player and a catcher. Those are like a combination to make good coaches for me, from everything I've seen from prospects, coaching across all sports. But Stuart, you kind of sound like my dad with all sports. He feels like it's too many coaches, just period. He talks about that in the NBA, he talks about it in the NFL, he talks about it on baseball. But that's just what it is nowadays. Everybody has their specialty guy. They have the guys for position and coaches. They feel like it makes them better. And but I think that is the transition that's going to happen with him. You can see he's on the fast track. So he's clearly showed that he can be a leader of men, which I feel like is very important in the young guys, and it's becoming a young guy sport. And so it's interesting to see what goes with this. I think he'll be a manager soon, probably now.
Candy?
He didn't play long in the majors. He didn't have an illustrious career as a catcher. Yes, he was a catcher. But kudos to him for getting promoted, because I always like, especially when they promote from within. But yeah, how many coaches do we need? How many coaches are we going to get into? How many people does it take to coach all this? And what kind of, let's face it, we've all been talking about the money in baseball and how much these players are making now. The question is how much are we going to be spending on all these coaches as well? We don't talk a lot about that, but we talk about the owners not ponying up for all the players. But how much other expenses are there associated with a winning ball club? There's more than just the actual players' salaries. We have, the utilities of the stadiums, the travel, the managers, the coaches. How much, are we talking about? And don't get me wrong, I know owners are billionaires and have lots of money, but what all are the expenses, and how many more of these expenses are we going to have? And yes, are we going to have baseball next year?
Eric?
I mean, good for JP Arencibia. I remember him with the he played with the Blue Jays for a little while, and then he kind of bounced around and then was out of baseball. But this is a guy who who's probably on track to be a manager at some point in the next few years. But man, these coaching staffs are getting way too big. I mean, now we're having like hitting strategy and all this other stuff where I think players now are getting information overload. And so like you got to find but catching is one of those things that I think does need a coach for, because it's one of the most sophisticated positions in baseball outside of being a pitcher. And I think that's one of the positions that you really need a coach for. I think JP Arencibia has experience to do that, and they say that sometimes the players who actually played, and weren't very good, make the best coaches and managers.
Yeah, I played the position of catcher. I really enjoyed it. It's one position where you get into the game, you're in the game on every single pitch. You talk to the umpires, you talk to the pitchers, and you can call a game and you control the outcome as much as the pitcher. So I understand why they have a catching coach. And nowadays, if you looked at the average Major League Baseball roster, there's a lot more coaches than you can imagine. When Candy and I were up in Toronto, and saw the Blue Jays take on the Royals. I'm looking at the Blue Jays roster of coaches. It's unbelievable. And I went up there and hang out with my buddy Don Mattingly for sure. All right, well, we'll talk about some TV news. Obviously, in metropolitan New York, nobody knows it better than Stewart, so we may isolate it to Stewart on this one. The WPIX renews a TV deal to carry the Mets games through the 2028 season. So they're going to get about 30 games per season. How important, Stuart, is the WPIX relationship to the metropolitan New York area? I know that they obviously have been carrying the Mets games for a lot of years.
You know, when I was growing up, the Met games were on WOR, and at some point, and the Yankees were on WPIX, and then they switched. It's somewhat important. I don't think it's as important as it used to be. You know, I almost wonder right now, they get the Gary Cohen, Keith Hernandez, and Ron Darling team on the Picks games. So right now, Keith Hernandez is still negotiating his contract. He's not signed. And I wonder if PIX knows something. I wonder if that lowers the value if they have the least bit of a fear that he's not going to come back. I mean, I think he is going to come back, but I'm wondering if by them renewing, they're pretty sure that he will. And even without him, I think the Mets have a pretty good broadcasting team. You know, it's just right now with streaming and everything, you know, WPIX is only going to have 25 regular season games, I think 5 spring training games. So it's not a huge amount. Most of it will be on SNY. But, you know, I guess it's some people still want it and they got it.
So you say Ron Darling is in the fold, but Keith Hernandez and who else is on that team as well?
Oh, Gary Cohen. So Gary Cohen and Ron Darling, my understanding is they're signed to do the games for both SNY and obviously
Gary Cohen.
Yeah. Keith Hernandez has always been signing like 3-year contracts, and I think he had said something to the effect that if he signs another 3-year contract, it would likely be his last because he's 72 or he'll be 72 this year. So that would take him to 75.
Fair enough. That's all. We'll just leave you as the sole person on this topic, unless anybody else wants to talk about. Obviously, 25, 30 games a year isn't a lot, but go ahead, Eric. Some thoughts about this.
I mean, WPIX did the Yankee games for the longest time on Channel 11, but now I don't think those TV and broadcast deals aren't as big anymore because now we have MLB.TV where you can get every game imaginable. I know Major League Baseball has taken over for some of the teams just due to the collapse of the RSN model. But, you know, I think it's just for nostalgic purposes, really, because nowadays things are streamed more. It's not like they used to be, like where they were beyond cable TV, where back in the day, PIX was the Yankees. You turned to Channel 11 on a Saturday afternoon, and the game would be on. And so I think it's more or less for nostalgic purposes, really, because we just have so many more options to tune into the game. And SNY is the main channel that holds the Mets, and Gary Cohen, as well as generally Keith Hernandez and also Ron Darling are on there, and people clearly really like them as they're considered one of the best booths in baseball. And so, but more or less, it's just nostalgia at this point, just because the TV model has changed.
Fair enough. Okay. We'll stay with the Mets team for one or two more topics anyway, because obviously they've made a lot of interesting moves. But actually, when you look at them, let's talk about Mets right-handed starter Frankie Montes, who underwent Tommy John surgery. He's expected to be out until the 2027 season. How big of a loss is this for the Mets, Eric?
It's not. He was a disaster last year. It was awful watching him pitch. He was the worst. But no, it's not that big of a loss because what did he do? What did he do for him last year is the real question. You can go ahead and say he was hurt all you want, but man, ever since he left Oakland, he just hasn't been it. He's at this point in his career, even though he's still, young in terms of baseball at age 32, he's been pitching like he's washed up. But, I don't think the Mets are going to miss him very much. He only made 7 starts last year and had a 6.28 ERA. I'm talking that's a world-class disaster. And, since leaving Oakland after the terrific first half, he hasn't been the same since.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, I have the same pretty much. I mean, he hasn't been the same post the Yankees trade. His lowest ERA since then has been 4.55. So maybe he has been hurt and not right. So this might be the best thing for him to actually get healthy and figure it out, because after this, it's probably nothing else for him in the league, you know. So let's give the Mets a chance to let the young guys play. It's not going to miss too much.
Well, I mean, think about it. If he's going to be out until the 2027 season, and technically
And
he
it
could be
might
out 2 years if
Yeah.
things go on the trajectory that we think that they could.
As a Yankee fan, all I got to tell
Stuart?
Mets fans,
You know what? It was a head scratcher when they signed him.
Go ahead,
I guess David Stearns had some familiarity with him in Milwaukee. He was there a season. I understand maybe trying to get lightning in a bottle, that maybe he'll come, but they're paying him not to pitch in 2026, $17 million. So to me, does he have compromising pictures of David Stearns that he's holding on him? I just don't understand. I can understand signing him, to like a minor league deal or something and seeing if it works out. But I mean, the last time he was really effective was 2021 with the A's, and I just didn't see paying him all that money, and it was just a disaster. And I remember last year too, when he was doing the minor league rehab starts, they were hitting him around, and they were like leery about bringing him up to the club. And then finally, they just needed a starter for a game, so they just threw him in there. And as Eric said, he had a +6 ERA, and it was just a disaster.
Candy?
In 2024, the Reds traded Montes to the Brewers. In 11 starts for the Brewers, he posted a 3-3 record with a 4.55 ERA with 70 strikeouts across 57 and a third innings. On November 4th, Montes declined his option for 2025, becoming a free agent. That's when Montes, on December 4th of 2024, signed a 2-year, $34 million contract with the Mets, including an opt-out after the 2025 season. On February 17th of 2025, he suffered a high-grain lat strain, which shut him down for 6 to 8 weeks. And then now he's got the Tommy John surgery. He's had a lot of injuries as of late. So to be getting paid $17 million a year, where do I sign up?
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, one more time with the Mets for a little bit anyways. At one point or another, the Mets on the road were 31-44, but then they wound up 34-47, which is a major reason that they missed the playoffs. Road rules are not getting into playoffs, Eric.
no, they're not, because you got to win on the road. I mean, it's inevitable you're going to play on the road, but you got to find a way to win on the road. And it's part of the reason why the Mets had another infamous collapse, maybe worse than 07 or 08, because back in 07, 08, you had I think you had 1 or 2 wild card teams. Now you have 3, and that gives teams that much more of an opportunity to get in back in the day. But this one might have been the worst, because they just, once the second half hits, it was just a slow methodical burn that kept them out of the postseason, despite having, I think, the second highest payroll in baseball. But what do you know? It's the Mets. So should we be surprised? No.
Tony?
Me and 2 of my cousins, we have a phrase, and it's the Mets gonna Met it. Okay. Yep. And that's just a fact, man. The Mets are gonna Met it, and they did it down the stretch. In unprecedented Mets fashion.
Yep.
And even coming down to Miami, right? They still had a chance.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get it done against the Marlins. I don't know. But it seemed like, now things are coming out. There's a lot more dysfunction than we might have known in the clubhouse. Who knows? Maybe they clean that up this year. They kumbaya. I don't know. But it made me happy. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, it made me happy.
It made me happy to see it happen. So Mets, keep metting it. I hope it starts off great for another epic collapse, honestly.
LOL Mets.
LOL Mets.
Stuart, have you met Tony? Obviously, he's not.
I think I'm going to go.
No, go.
Don't go. Don't go.
The road woes were probably the least of their issues in 2025. I think starting pitching, which was unbelievably great the first 2 months of the year, just collapsed the second half of the season. And when your starters are going 3 or 4 innings and, you're putting a strain on your bullpen, and your bullpen wasn't that reliable outside of Diaz. So I think that was an issue. As Tony alluded to, the clubhouse, as we're learning more and more each day, was likely an issue. I think what the Mets did, and a lot of teams do this, is they build their teams like you're building a fantasy baseball team. They're looking at the numbers. They're saying, this guy is great. Let's, just put him in there. But they're forgetting some of the intangibles. So in 2024, they had Iglesias and JD Martinez, who maybe weren't like huge number guys, but the influence that they had in the clubhouse was very valuable. And they weren't able to duplicate that in 2025. And if you look at some of the moves that they've made recently, some of them, like Simeon's from Texas, is supposedly a great guy. The guy they just Freddie Peralta is supposed to be a really stand-up guy. So some of the guys that they're acquiring. So the question is, will they mesh with the guys that they have? And that's the big thing. And hopefully they do. And if everyone meshes and they put up the numbers they can, hopefully they won't be netting it.
Candy?
I think a lot of teams are going to look at last year's Milwaukee Brewers and say, how were they so successful with such a low payroll? And I'll tell you, it's because Pat Murphy had that locker room and everybody loved playing it for the Brewers, for Pat Murphy. It was a locker room that everybody supported each other. And I think more and more teams are going to realize that might be part of the secret to success. Yes, it's great to have good talent. You need to have that as well. But you also need to have a good locker room. Part of the the Mets' woes is they had multiple 7 to 8 game losing streaks. Their second half record was 38-55. It included an 0-7 skid in August that didn't help either. You can't. I mean, I get you go through a slump, but you can't consistently have 7 and 8 game losing streaks and think you're going to win and get there. And I know that I'm not going to say any more about people going from Milwaukee to the Mets because I know that's going to be a topic later on. But I think more teams are going to start looking at who do they want in their locker room besides the big talent that'll help gel their locker room and not alienate their locker room.
Can I say something real quick?
Well, the reality is yeah, go ahead.
Candy, see, this is why you're the woman. Because I let my emotion take over and my hatred for the Mets. And you came with the numbers. I had the numbers. I couldn't even get them out. That's why you're the woman. See, thank you.
I will say to add insult to injury to the Mets is the Reds lost to the Brewers on the same day that the Mets ended up losing the last game of the year to the Marlins to get eliminated. So it was there for the taking for the Mets to squeak right in, but they just did what they did what they've been doing since before I was born.
The Mets gonna admit it.
Yep.
Well, I mean, last year I came out of spring training feeling pretty good. They had Pete Alonso and they had a lot of people there, but all of a sudden, and we'll get into some of those topics later. I'm just trying to talk about the fact that when you can't win on the road, it's not going to help your matters any either. You have to be able to win important series on the road, and considering that they ended up losing on the final day of the year to the Marlins, and it was there, like Eric said, it was there for the taking. Eric, you just set up the narrative as well as you can, and that record I just disclosed there, when it was all said and done, 34-77. That means you're what, 13 games under 500. That's not going to get it done. All right. Well, we're talking about the Mets. What about the Padres? Well, after the wild card exit, what's next for them? Well, Dylan Cease, obviously, Candy will give us updates of where these guys are at. Was a free agent after the year. Luis Arias, who I hated to see leave Miami. And he had Ryan O'Hearn, who obviously was a free agent. Nestor Cortez was a free agent. Michael King, 2026 mutual option, and Robert Suarez opted out. All right. Well, again, the Padres are a team regrouping, and they lost their manager, Mike Schilt. Eric, start from there.
Well, Schilt resigned on his own, and I think reportedly it was because he was burned out and he was tired of being the principal, as we've come to find out later. Although I don't know how I don't know about the side details there, because I'm sure that was code name for I don't feel like dealing with AJ Preller or Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado anymore. But right now, Craig Stammen's the new guy in San Diego. Dylan Cease left, yes, which I don't think is going to be that big of a loss as much as people think, because let's be honest, Dylan Cease is getting overpaid got overpaid badly by the Toronto Blue Jays, which I don't think he's really worth the money that they're paying him. And I think that right now it's about them kind of getting it back together. Their team is going to probably look relatively different next year. And it'll be interesting. And I think they also lost Robert Suarez as well, who was one of the best closers in the National League last year. I think they're regrouping, going to get it back together. And with what they have in that lineup, though, I'd expect them to be competitive, but no way they're overtaking the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers, that team is just too powerful right now. It's more powerful than Oz at this point. But yeah,
Tony.
The Padres are a team in transition right now. And like you said, you lose a Suarez.
Yep.
They kind of seem like they're preparing for no baseball in 2027 with some of the signings or non-signings. I think they'll be competitive, but the move that they could have made with the Mackenzie Gore, I guess they realized that it costs a lot. It costs prospects. It costs 4 or 5 for ones, and I don't think they're ready to get into those deep waters.
They traded him for Juan Soto.
Yeah, which is also crazy. But I don't know. I don't know with the Padres. It's always interesting because they'll spend money, but they spend bad money. They haven't really did that this offseason, so they're gonna run with what they have. I see them probably the third best team in the West, tops.
Stuart.
They'll, as everyone's saying, they'll be competitive. They're not winning that division. At best, they'll be a wild card. They also have, they may be selling the team. So if new ownership comes in, how will they do things? Will they stay competitive? Or, so there are a lot of open things that are happening out in San Diego, and it'll be interesting to see.
All right, Candy.
So they've signed Michael King, Sungwon Song, Kyle Hart, Kyle Adcock, and Dejan Acosta. The ones that left already are Dylan Cease, Robert Suarez, and Ryan O'Hearn. The ones that they have left that are still available are Luis Arias, Nestor Cortez, Elias Diaz, and Jose Iglesias. Those are who they have left that are still free agents that are out there. So unrestricted free agents. But do I think the Padres will always seem competitive? But I don't think they're going to be vying for any championship in that division or anything like that.
Well, I'll go back to what Tony said. They seem to spend bad money. But this team, I'm surprised they haven't been back to a World Series with all the talented players that they have. That's the thing that's mind-boggling. And they make big trades at the deadline, but yet they don't make it to the World Series. But we'll see where a lot of these moves. But you talk about a wild card exit with the players that they have. It's a very interesting story to follow for sure as we get ready for at least one more full season of Major League Baseball. All right, well, let's talk about Nathan Eovaldi. Successfully underwent surgery to repair a bilateral sports hernia. He also missed the final month of the 2025 season due to a rotator cuff strain, but he is expected to make a full recovery from both injuries ahead of spring training. He had a career year of 1.73 ERA, 0.85 WHIP, 194 average, and with 130 innings pitched. All right, Eric, some thoughts about Nathan Eovaldi.
I mean, he was a guy who kind of bounced around the league for a while. He's definitely had his injuries over the years, but he seemingly found a home with the Texas Rangers and has been a big part of that team, and even helped them win the World Series in 2023. So it's with him making a full recovery, it gives the Rangers that they're a numero uno at the top of their rotation. And if he could come back and be the Nathan Eovaldi that he's been with the Rangers, it'll hopefully bode for good things for Texas, who's playing in a division that's gotten significantly weaker gradually weaker over the years. The Astros aren't what they used to be. They're kind of aged significantly, thank God. And they're also going up against the Seattle Mariners team, which can Seattle repeat what they did last year? Who knows? So if things go right, they could very easily find themselves back in the postseason. And if Eovaldi pitches like an ace, anything's possible.
Tony?
Yeah, Evaldi's 1.73 ERA would have been the lowest if he would have pitched more innings. If he can get to 90% of that, they'll be good. You still have DeGrom, and then you add in Mackenzie Gore to that rotation. The Rangers can definitely make a run at the West. The last 4 starts, he only gave up 8 runs, and that's even with a terrible game, giving up 5 in 5 innings. So he's definitely locked in. It's interesting how pitchers can become that in the league because, like you said, Eric, he bounced around, right? Like he was a solid rotation guy. But like now he's like a Cy Young candidate at his best. So it's pretty cool to see what he's become in the league.
Big part of the World Series team.
Yeah.
Stuart?
He could be a solid. I think they just need him to be a solid second or third starter. I don't know if they necessarily need him to be an ace. If DeGrom is healthy, if Gore lives up to his potential, I think they have a good solid 3 starting pitchers right there that will make them contenders. He did have a sports hernia operation in October, but they expect him to make Eovaldi. They do expect him to make a full recovery come spring training, and he's signed for 2 more years. Well, really 1 more year, assuming they play. If they don't play baseball, then I don't know what happens. But yeah, he was someone as Tony was saying, he was a serviceable pitcher early in his career, and then something must have clicked. Maybe it was that catching coach or that assistant one of the new coaches that they have coming in that went with him. But yeah, he had a great year when he was on the mound last year, and I'm sure Texas would take that again for a few more starts in 2026.
Andy?
As a starting pitcher, Eovaldi is associated primarily with his electric 4-seam fastball, which regularly throws at 96 to 97, occasionally topping out at 101. Although a pitcher with his high-velocity fastball would traditionally be labeled as a power pitcher, he's not, because most of his career he throws multiple different pitches. He regularly uses a wide secondary arsenal to complement his fastball. Throws a slider in the mid to high 80s, a cut fastball in the low 90s, a curveball in the high 70s, and a split finger fastball in the high 80s, giving him a total of 5 distinct pitches. And in 2021, he was the only pitcher to throw 5 different pitches at a rate of 10% or higher, which confuses batters because they don't know exactly what pitches he's throwing. And they incorrectly guess. They could be swinging what they think is a slow curveball, but then it's a splitter or vice versa. So he has the opportunity because of that to be a really good pitcher. He just needs to stay healthy, and hopefully, with the problems that he had last year and the surgeries, he'll get back to that form.
I'll be interested to see how Skip Schumacher, the former Marlins manager, does with Texas in his first year for sure, and how he's able to go ahead and manage Evaldi for sure. Well, Tony kind of mentioned it, so we're going to lead into it with, and that being the trade of obviously Mackenzie Gore, the left-handed pitcher that Texas acquired from the Washington Nationals. For those of you that are purists in the game, once upon a time there was a Washington Senators who moved to become the Texas Rangers. Just thought I'd throw that Washington connection in there. But Texas does obtain Mackenzie Gore in exchange. Washington gets a boatload of prospects. They get shortstop Gavin Feen, who's Texas' number 2 prospect. Right-handed pitcher Alejandro Rosario was their number 6. Devin Fitzgerald, the number 12 prospect. Outfielder Jeremy Cabrera, the number 16 prospect. And first baseman, outfielder Abimelech Ortiz. Okay, well, let's talk. We'll lead it off with you, Tony. What are your thoughts about the return for Mackenzie Gore? I know a lot of prospects involved.
All right, so there's a lot of prospects, 5, right? There were no top 100 prospects in this whole trade. So some people are looking at it like maybe the Washington team got fleeced out of it. The Rangers got to keep their top prospect. So I really feel like the Rangers really got the better of this trade. If Mackenzie Gore is what we think that he is, especially seeing as he doesn't have to be the number 1 on this, him being a 2 or a 3, that's a pretty good 2 or 3 for this deal. So I like it for the Rangers. But hey, with prospects, with the 7 or 8 coaches that they're going to have per player, hey man, they might turn out to be great. So that's the good return for the Nationals, right? If they believe in their scouting department, if they believe that they can mold these players and what they've seen in these players, it can work out for both teams. But I like when you get the better player. I always side with that team.
Stuart?
I think Gore is going into a really good situation with Texas. He's not expected to be the ace. He's got guys that he could learn from. He's got a nice team behind him, and it'll be a way to make him shine. And as Tony said, the 5 prospects, I mean, maybe one surprises people, but for Texas, I think this was a no-brainer of a deal.
Candy?
Part of Gore is he throws at least 80% fastballs and sliders to lefties and 80% fastballs and curveballs to righties. So developing maybe another fourth or fifth pitch that he could throw to confuse people might be the way to go. Do I think this is a good trade? You always are taking a crapshoot when you're doing prospects, and you just never know. Do you have the coaches to develop those prospects to help your team? I mean, let's face it, getting 5 players for 1 is a pretty good haul if they turn out. I think this could be a win-win for both, to be honest with you. So that's what you always want to see. So let's hope that they do and that they address some of the needs that they needed.
Eric?
I mean, the fact they didn't have to trade any top 100 prospects is a surprise in and of itself, especially since Mackenzie Gore was an all-star last year for the first time in his career, and he's put up decent numbers while pitching for a really bad Washington Nationals team. But the fact that he's going to Texas, where he doesn't have to be the number one guy, is going to be huge for him. I think next year he'll put up even better numbers. He's got a better team behind him than he ever has in Washington, and I think next year, he'll be able to continue what he's doing and probably put up even better numbers since he doesn't have the pressure of carrying a really bad team.
See, I've always been intrigued by these 5-1 trades. You get 1 or 2 prospects that turn out to be anything, then at least you feel you got quantity, hoping to get some quality out of those types of trades. And meanwhile, like you say, he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy. We already mentioned the Evaldi to begin with. So it's just interesting how they all interrelate well. So it'll be one. We'll find out how it plays out. The Angels have re-signed Yohan Moncada. Some thoughts about the move, Tony?
Uh, the Angels are kind of the Mets West. But I like that they're trying to get better. Let's see how it plays out. I think I missed this on my notes. I'm not gonna lie, so I don't have a lot to say about this one. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. Move on. Stuart.
About you're referring to who?
Makata.
Makata.
Yeah,
I guess because
Moncada.
Rendon retired, that was a horrible contract that he signed with the Yankees. Makata's had injury problems as well, so it'll be the Angels are kind of hoping for lightning in a bottle, and maybe he'll go back to some of his days with the White Sox. He had one great year with the White Sox. I think he hit over 300, and he's still relatively young. He'll only be like 31 next season.
Katie.
So last year he had signed a 1-year, $5 million contract. He played in 84 games. He played 76 games at third base, but he dealt with a right thumb strain early in the season and then right knee inflammation in June that lingered through the rest of the season. So, yes, now they brought him back on a 1-year worth $4 million contract, pending a physical. So it depends on if he passes. So, uh, I if you have a knee strain that lingers through the season, rest is what you really need. So hopefully he can pass his physical and then play next year. And hopefully he stays healthy because that's really the key to a lot of these guys is staying healthy.
Eric.
I mean, Makata started off initially well, but then he he's like what's been the tale of his career. He's been constantly hurt. Originally, I thought last year the Brewers would actually give him a shot at third base. Obviously, before we knew anything about Caleb Durbin, but this is a guy whose career is literally on life support. I think you could probably argue he's circling the drain now, considering how hurt he's been. But it's the Angels. At this point, everyone goes to the Angels not because they want to; it's because they have to in order for have an opportunity to stay in the show. The last thing you want though is to get stuck there because then your career is really in trouble. You could probably put the Angels up there with the White Sox as well as the A's, where players go not because they want to. It's just so they can kind of either reinvigorate their career or keep themselves in the show. But you don't want to get stuck there, otherwise your career is in trouble.
Fair enough. Again, everything to gain, nothing to lose, as far as I'm concerned. Bringing him in. You
Right.
mentioned that Michael Rendon has been bought out, so
Anthony Rendon.
if you can get a low risk player with some sort of return, I don't have to see any problem with it at all. Now, so let's talk about another acquisition we've made. On the move, J.J. Bleday reportedly agreed to a deal with the Cincinnati Reds. He played last year with the Athletics. He played for Sacramento and Oakland. Some thoughts about the move about J.J. Bleday going to the Midwest. At least he knows he'll play. He won't play in a minor league stadium, Eric.
No, he won't. I mean, JJ Bleday was a guy that that the A's had very high hopes for. As soon as they got once they got him from the Marlins, but he really hasn't been able to put it together. I mean, he had a decent year in 24 where we're thinking, okay, he's got a breakout year could be on the horizon where he hit 20 bombs and 60 RBI, but his biggest problem has been just putting it together. Last year he regressed kind of again, but he's been, hopefully he can put it together in his new stop. I mean, the Reds, it's a very hitter friendly ballpark, like the minor league park that the A's are currently playing in Sacramento. But I think he could still do it. He's still relatively young. I believe he is. Give me a second.
He's
He's
27.
28. 28.
Hey,
Yep, he's 28 years old, so there's still hope for him, But guys typically start to bloom we've seen guys bloom at that age, so I still think he can. He's got a really great opportunity to be doing it at a hitter-friendly ballpark in Cincinnati.
Tony.
Yeah, somebody who's last year, like Eric said, regressed. You're hoping this is a buy low, and he kind of balls out in a hitter friendly ballpark. for the Reds, this is what you have to do, with small market teams, right? You have to try and relatively young big leaguers hope that they can figure something out in the league with your team for cheap. So hopefully that happens in Cincinnati with him.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he's still young. Maybe he clicks with one of their, 37 coaches that they have on staff, and he's able to put together and have a year that he had a couple of years ago.
I saved that one for you. I was going to say it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, Candy.
So Blade debuted back in 2019. Before that, he actually won Southeastern Conference Baseball Player of the Year back in his junior year in 2019. So he has it in him. Whether it hasn't been the right coaches, the right team so far, maybe that's it. Now he in 2023 he did was diagnosed with an anterior crucial ligament sprain, and that could have hampered him for a while and lingered. So you just never know. But Cincinnati signing him to a 1-year, $1.4 million contract, that's a pretty minor contract. That's not a big, high cost, high risk contract for the Reds. So hopefully he gets back. He gets the coaching he needs, gets the discipline he needs, and he can do well as long as he doesn't do well against the Brewers. I'm okay with it.
With the Mets.
As far as I'm concerned, he's got Terry Francona. If anybody could get him fixed, it'd be Terry Francona for sure. We all know what a good manager is. Anybody else? Any thoughts on it? Now we'll go to one of the topics that many people are waiting for, and that being the full trade of Freddie Peralta going to the Mets, along with right-handed pitcher Tobias Myers to the Mets. The Brewers end up getting Jeff Williams, who's actually the number 30 prospect in all of MLB, and then right-handed pitcher Brandon Sproat, number 5 prospect of the Mets. Okay, Eric, some thoughts about the trade.
It was not surprising. At the same time, it was surprising because you start to get late in January where these guys start to really wonder, especially ones involved in the trade rumors. Am I going to Florida or am I going to Arizona? And so now Freddie Peralta has his answer where he'll be heading down to Florida this spring. The Brewers made this move because that's just the way they have to operate. Is every year, despite going on a deep playoff run, inevitably one great player from that team is going to get traded or leave as a free agent. I personally thought after the NLCS run that I think the Brewers would kind of give Freddie Peralta the Willy Adames exception, given what he means to the clubhouse. And but unfortunately they did. But the Brewers got themselves a nice return. Jet Williams, who's number top, is inside like the top 30 in the MLB top 100 list. Brandon Sproat, who is a really promising arm inside the Mets farm system. Even made a few starts last year, and the Brewers are going to probably be counting on him to be a part of their rotation for years to come. Tobias Myers is a guy who I think really fell out of favor with the Brewers this past year. He got hurt and then really wasn't the same after being, I think, one of their better arms in 2024. And the Brewers just essentially put him as a throw-in deal to balance out the salaries. And so, that's just kind of what happened with him. But Peralta, this is the way the Brewers have to operate. It's just the reality of the market that they are in.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, a huge need for the Mets. Clearly, the Mets needed help with starting pitching. And to echo Eric, this is a Brewers move. You got to move him a year before he got to get paid and get something for him. But unlike the Rangers, the Brewers made sure to get some top prospects from the other team. Like, if you're going to trade your best pitcher, you should at least get some top prospects back from it, right? So them getting the top 30 prospect, having an arm to kind of sadly watch and repeat this situation, right? You'll have somebody young who can come up and kind of fill the Peralta shoes for the next 4 or 5 years and, see what happens with that. Solidify the Mets. You have an ace. He's at the top of their rotation. Clay Holmes is still there. I guess he'll be like the 2 or 3. I feel like the Mets still got a little bit of work to do with the pitching staff, but this is a step in the right direction.
Stuart.
I like the trade. I think what people forget too, yeah, Brandon Sproat was a top prospect, but I think they like Nolan McLean a little bit more, and they view Nolan McLean as a potential ace down the line. And what this does is Freddie Peralta actually takes some of the pressure off of Nolan McLean, because without Peralta, McLean is expected to be the ace in 2026. With Peralta, not necessarily. So from that standpoint, I like the trade, and McLean can go about his business and continue to learn. Jet Williams was a top prospect, but you just never know with these things. And Tobias Myers, I think he's someone that they're looking at a multi-inning bullpen role right now, and he does have the starting pitching background. So it might be somewhat of a sleeper coming out of their bullpen to give them innings when they do need it. And Peralta also, although they're only paying him $8 million this year, he has said he's open to signing an extension now with the Mets.
Well, with that being a lockout year, he's going to have to.
Okay, Candy, go ahead.
So it's
Brewers way of
doing business. We're a small market team that can't afford the big. Our owners can't afford the big guns. So let's face it. You have a choice. You keep Freddie and Tobias, and then next year Freddie's going to walk because he's going to be a free agent. He's going to get signed someplace else because the Brewers aren't going to be able to afford them. So what do? They trade them away a year before so that they can get prospects and get new blood into their team. And they're a young team. Let's face it. But that's something that Murphy is really good at developing and really gelling the team together. The other thing is we made a choice. Brandon Woodruff, bringing him back, or Peralta. They decided to bring Woodruff back. Woodruff is on track for coming back after his injury. So they didn't have much of a choice. They also have Jacob. They have other pitchers in their lineup that they think they can go with. In Jet's case, bringing him to the Brewers, he's a gamer that's played everywhere. He fits their team. He fits Pat Murphy's style of player. He's a gamer. He's not that big, but he plays with a ton of heart, and he's got incredible tools. He's one of the fastest players in the minor leagues. So he thinks his versatility is something that's going to fit very well, and that was from Arnold, a quote that he had said to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. So they're excited about him. Are we sad that Peralta is going to be gone? Of course. He was a huge part of the rotation for a number of years. But the reality is, if they wanted to get something for him, they needed to deal him now, as opposed to just letting him go walk before. And it's something we're very familiar with. If everybody remembers, we traded Devin Williams away. We've traded Corbin Burns away. We've had good pitchers that we've had to trade away because that's just Milwaukee Brewers style. They small market teams can't compete with some of these big payrolls, and maybe I shouldn't say they can't. Sometimes they choose not to. That might be another way because these are all billionaires that own these teams. So hopefully it's a good one for both sides.
You said it yourself. Brandon Woodruff, obviously. Yeah, on the surface, this looks like a rental for the Mets, but when you have Steve Cohen's checkbook, it isn't a rental. Mets got money to burn. They really do. And I'll get more involved with some of the Mets topics as we go along. I just want to bring a lot of people up to date. But Steve Cohen's got to sign this guy. And of course, you have David Stearns who knows everything about him. This is an obvious re-sign if I ever saw one for sure. A couple of WBC notes, and then we'll talk about our featured topic of the day. Luis Severino of the A's will pitch for the Dominican Republic WBC. Eric, some thoughts about Luis Severino?
He was horrible last year for the A's. Even went as far to spat on the A's for their minor league setup. But I I wrote an article saying you knew what you were getting into, Luis Severino. He was brought. The reason he went over there was because the A's paid him more money than anyone else ever wanted to. But we all know that money is not necessarily the key to happiness, and Luis Severino found that out. I don't think he's gonna really get in many games with them because his best days and when he was the promising 19-win All-Star for the Yankees are behind him. At this point, he's like a number 4, number 3 on a perfect day.
Tony.
You're muted, Tony.
You're muted, Tony.
It's funny that we were talking about Nathan Eovaldi, and it's the polar opposite of Severino. Like Severino at some point thought would have like Cy Young stuff and was just such a great player. And look at him now. The A's had to pay somebody, right? And it just happened to be Severino. Maybe they're betting on him showing something in, I guess, their camps or their preseason games that he can give them a couple of innings. I don't know. I know they wouldn't have him starting any high leverage games, but let's see what he does. I mean, him pitching well will be good for the A's because, I mean, he'll be going into the season pitching well, but I just don't see it.
Stuart.
I know when he was a free agent last year, the Mets had shown some interest in bringing him back. And the year he had with the Mets was kind of a bounce back for him. He showed he was healthy. He was a solid pitcher. Going to the A's, obviously he's pitching half his games in a minor league ballpark, which he, as you guys said earlier, he stated he was not happy with that. But, the A's paid him, I think, $23 million annually to just suck it up and pitch. I'm not a huge fan of the WBC just because of the timing of it, for two reasons. I enjoy going to a spring training game, but I do like seeing some of my favorite players there. And if they're all gone, playing in the WBC, I'm not going to see them. And then there's the injury thing. You had Diaz a couple of years ago for the Mets, which I still I wake up screaming in the middle of the night. My wife's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He got hurt in the celebration. They're carrying him. It's horrible. I don't know the best time necessarily to do this. Years ago, and then I'm going back to the get off my lawn guy again. They used to have tours of Japan, which were done like in November after the regular season. And what they traditionally did was they would take a World Series team from the prior year. So like the Mets, who made the World Series in '73, traveled to Japan in '74. And what I remember, they came the closest at the time to being the first team to lose the season series to Japan. Because all the other teams, they did this annually, would always just run all over them. So I'm not sure when the best time to do this. You have to be concerned about injuries. I understand players have pride for their countries, but the bottom line, the big money is being paid to play between April and October. And I just wouldn't want someone getting hurt in March.
Candy.
I get what you're saying, Stuart. I understand. The other thing is I understand Severino pitching or playing in this one because if you remember, he was restricted from playing in the 2023 World Baseball Classic by the Yankees due to injury concerns. So he couldn't represent back in 2023. And I can understand some, before you call it a career that you want to play for your country and represent your country. So kudos to him. I think this World Baseball Classic will be one of the most interesting because more of the big name players are playing in it. So I think this one will be interesting, and I probably will watch.
Yeah, vice versa. One more WBC note worth talking about. Ernie Clement will play for Team USA. WBC, everybody knows what Ernie Clement did for the Toronto Blue Jays, Eric. It's a good opportunity, though, for Ernie, for sure. He's going to have a good USA team to play with.
He was in, he was really he was really clutch down the stretch for the Toronto Blue Jays, especially in the postseason. He's got a great opportunity here to play for his country, and he's on Team USA's dream team, if you will, with Aaron Judge and Cal Raleigh and others. and it's gonna be fun. I think this is the best Team USA has looked in a really long time.
Tony,
Yeah, I got clutch next to it, and we know he's gonna hunt that first pick. So you better not throw a strike. All right. It gives us depth at the left side of the infield from second all the way to third base, and you always need that in these situations. You never know what can happen. People do get hurt. So I like that for him. And hey, high leverage situations, you want people who've been in it, and he's just coming off a World Series where he played well. So I like that for the World Baseball Classic. And Toronto should like this. I believe when players get around in these situations and they're around other great players, it helps elevate their game and their skill set just overall as a person. So hurts as a Yankees fan, but it should be good for Toronto.
Snort.
So, he made a name for himself in the postseason last year. He had 30 hits, which coincidentally was the same number of hits the Mets had for the entire month of September. But those 30 hits probably got him a spot on the roster. Good for him. He could make more of a name for himself on a national and international level. And, in a few years, he'll see the big money.
Candy.
He finished the postseason. He had 22 singles in the 2025 postseason, which was also a record. He finished the playoffs hitting 411, 30 for 77, with a 977 OPS, 6 doubles, 1 triple, 1 home run, 9 ribbies, and 13 runs scored, and having played every inning in the postseason. That's what got him on the World Baseball Classic. Good luck to him. I hope he does well. And that also, they avoided arbitration with a $4.6 million deal with the Jays for the 2026 season.
He's going to be playing with a lot of great players. He's going to have an experience of a lifetime. More power to him. All right, let's talk about our final topic, which is our featured topic of the night. MLB owners are raised by the Kyle Tucker contract. Let's go into the specifics of it, as they will go ahead and push 100% for a salary cap. But obviously, let's face the reality, no matter what. If there's not a reason to have a salary cap after this contract, tell me what it is. Signs a 4-year deal, $240 million. That was a boiling point for some of the owners. Obviously raging, and you're going to have a lockout that I think will occur by December 2nd. Eric, you had some strong opinions on it. We'll let you go ahead and lead off with them.
I mean, several owners, even before this, had already come out publicly and said that there was a need for a salary cap. I know Bob Nutting in Pittsburgh. Well, although a guy with low credibility, has already said that there needs to be a salary cap. The new owner in Baltimore has already said it. Dick Monfort in Colorado has already said it, and I'm sure that there's going to be more owners along the way this season who are going to come out publicly saying something needs to change. When Kyle Tucker signed that deal, the wound was already there. Now it's wide open, and it's wide open now. There's going to be a big giant push for a salary cap, worse than there ever was in 1994. I think that the Tucker deal ultimately is what ultimately has sealed the fate of what might be at very best a shortened Major League Baseball season in 2027.
Bob Nutting doesn't spend any money anyways, but reality of the situation, the Pirates haven't been relevant in ages. And when we come back on here in a few weeks or so, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates and what they haven't done. I think they're always an interesting story to talk about, considering the once proud history of that franchise. But go ahead, Tony, the boiling point, Kyle Tucker.
I hate the idea of a salary cap.
Go ahead, Tony.
I hate the idea of a salary cap. I hate the idea of now that Kyle Tucker chose the Dodgers. That's just it. It's too much. I think the thing that we should get away from is the deferral payments. I do feel like the team should have to pay the freight and during the life of the contract. I think that does kind of change things when it comes to paying these players, and the salary cap situation is kind of manipulating the numbers. And if you can defer contracts, how will that even work if you do a salary cap? Because Kyle Tucker's only getting paid like what, $1-2 million this year. That's what it looks like on the books. So like that, I think that's a bigger problem than a salary cap or not a salary cap. But I don't like the idea of it. Like I feel like honestly, as a Yankees fan since the '90s, I feel very hypocritical now saying, "Oh, now that the Dodgers are spending all this money, that we should have a salary cap." Like that just doesn't it doesn't even feel right coming out of my mouth saying that. I feel like teams that don't look at the teams that you mentioned, right? The A's, Pittsburgh, they don't spend money. That's your fault. Like go out there and try and win. I also feel like winning teams get more money. You said, like I always say this, you can raise ticket prices. You're going to sell more merch. You're going to do more at concessions because people want to come out and see and support winners, playoff games, and all those things alike. Spend more money and actually try and create winning teams. And baseball is also a unique sport where the big money doesn't always equate to winning. So I don't think a salary cap is needed. I really don't.
Yeah, but let's not kid ourselves. The owners are mad. And there comes a point where you ever heard of that thing called this is the straw that broke the camel's back? This is definitely one of them. Stuart?
2027 is probably going to be, when you look at history books, hundreds of years from now, a turning point for Major League Baseball. You have two sides on totally opposite ends of the spectrum, so something has got to give. And if they do have a lockout or if they do have a strike as time goes by, will the owners say, well, we'll try and bring in minor leaguers to play or bring in scabs to play? And how does that affect Major League Baseball going forward? And then, say they decide to do the salary cap and, that weakens the players union. So this is going to be a big thing. And I don't know what a compromise would be here. I don't even know what a limited salary cap would be. So I guess we'll see. I would hope, the optimist in me would like to see them settle something. I really don't, being a Met fan now, and now they're spending money, so I don't really care if there's a salary cap or not. But I understand some of the smaller market teams, but some of these smaller market teams have to help themselves too. If it's there, they got to spend the money. And there have been cases in the past where some small market teams just won't spend the money regardless. And I think if you own a Major League Baseball team and you want to be competitive, you have to spend some money. I think it's out there and you just got to do it.
Candy?
That's spoken like the fan of a team that's in a major market and has a owner that's willing to spend. The Dodgers are projected to have payroll larger than $413 million this year. Three other teams, the Mets, the Phillies, and the Toronto Blue Jays, are projected to be over $300 million. On the other side of things, three teams, the Cleveland Guardians, Tampa Bay Rays, and Miami Marlins, are projected to have payrolls between $100 million and $120 million. Exactly half of MLB clubs will spend less than $200 million next season. Obviously, there is a big gap. We all know that. Now, what I can say, the league's current labor agreement will expire just before midnight on December 1st, 2026. There are several major issues the two sides need to work out and agree to a new collective bargaining agreement. While there is an entire season to figure that out, the salary cap issue clearly is not going away. It would take at least 8 owners to hold up a labor deal. Now, Tony, to your point, just raise ticket prices? I'm sorry. In a small market like Milwaukee, if you raise ticket prices too high, you will not have the attendance because there is a supply and demand issue at that point. The one thing the Brewers did, the smartest thing they did is when they put a dome over their stadium so they're guaranteed games. Had they not done that, you would not see the attendance figures that they've had for the last couple of years. And in the same relevance, they would not have been able to afford some of the players that they've had as well. And yes, they've had success this last year, but I don't think they would have nearly the same success. So do I think I think there should be a floor, and I think there should be a cap. Uh, you see it in other sports, and it's working in other sports. I think you need to at some point. Otherwise, you will alienate some of the small markets, and maybe that's their goal. Maybe they only want a league with so many teams in it, and you won't see Major League Baseball um, in some of these towns that you see them now, and the league gets shrinks, because that's what, if you don't get to some point of an agreement, that's what you're going to have, unless you bring in more owners to own teams as well. That's the other thought.
Well, here's the jab. I agree. You have to have a floor for sure, but you're not going to get anything accomplished with expansion because obviously we have such a discrepancy in the way business is being done. It talks about expansion. Well, we got to get past this hurdle. There's no Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire to bail you out this time, or Cal Ripken. Who's going to bail you out? It took forever after the 1994 strike, and you lost the Montreal Expos as well. This is going to get ugly. I just think this is a tipping point where they finally got aggravated and said, we need to do this once and for all. You have salary caps in other sports, so this is the only one that doesn't, because the MLB player union is the strongest union of them all. So I understand both sides. 3 of the 4 major sports happen to have it. This one just doesn't have it, period. But I do agree you have to have a floor of spending. Marlins, keep in mind, they've won 2 world championships, but in the Marlins history, they've only had 4 winning seasons in their 34 years. That's not good. That really is really, really, really weak. So it's going to get ugly, but you're not. Who's going to bail out the sport next time? Who's going to care?
Aaron Judge.
Scott, do you feel like the owners?
Go ahead, I'm listening to them.
Do you feel like the owners are more? Well, you think they'll be more against a salary cap, or what more? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the question, because the floor, right? I feel like owners are going to be against the floor, maybe even more so.
They're adamant about the standard. No, they'll be at. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I feel like they're more against a salary floor
than
not having a salary cap with some of these owners, right? Like, I feel like that's going to kind of mess up the voting when you think about it, because you have the Pittsburghs, you have the Marlins, you have the A's. They don't want to spend a certain amount of money.
Well, they don't, but how long when the Dodgers start spending all the money and they're winning year in and year out, then what happens? What are we playing every year for?
Teams lose, fans will lose interest. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, the mistake that the owners made, and this happened way before this, was in the 70s when free agency first became a thing. You know, the NFL owners are smart when they did this during the 90s, because believe it or not, NFL free agency has only been existing since the 90s. I know it's hard to believe, but it actually is true. But the owners during that particular period of time to grant free agency said, right, we want a cap. If you don't give us a cap, you can't have free agency. They had Plan B free agency, but it wasn't nearly what free agency is now in the NFL. But they in order for them to grant free agency to the players, they demanded a cap. And that was the mistake that the owners made during the 70s, was they didn't push hard enough against Marvin Miller for the cap. And now we're about to reap the repercussions of it.
Yeah, the problem is it's going to get worse now, because there's so many options that people could do things that the probably won't care. I think it'd be hard for the sport to survive. Again, we lost a major market in Canada with the Montreal Expos that should have won that 94 title. We lost Montreal. The Expos were a good franchise, and they could have won that 94 World Series. They were certainly had enough people, good players, that won't get into that now as we run out of time. But the Montreal Expos were doomed after the 1994 player strike.
In hindsight, yeah, that was the beginning.
Look at the All-Star lineup that they had; it was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was too bad. Whether they get another team's another story. I think a lot of it will depend on if they get another ballpark, not the Olympic concrete dump that you seem to claim that we always have out there. But it was just too bad that the Montreal Expos But yeah, I think it's not a matter
What
of
does that
if,
make
it's a
Jerry
matter
Park
of
then?
when now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
going to
mean,
be bad.
it's
I mean, it's owners
inevitable.
versus owners versus players. It's owners versus players this time around.
Yeah.
And it's going to be ugly.
But, well, listen, we talked about this Monday night, Eric. I told you that the Kyle Tucker could be ugly. And then what am I seeing on social media after all that time, Eric? The same thing that we talked about Monday with that Kyle Tucker thing. And now everybody's talking about it. So the one thing that we can always do, Stuart, I'm sure you probably know this too, is as journalists, we work our best diligently to come up with good information. But your report card is what people are doing after you put the information out there, because you don't know who's listening to this stuff or watching it. And then 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, oh, they're talking about, well, my goodness, I'm not saying we're breaking news, but we're ahead of the curve. And over the last 3 or 4 days during the week, which is why I decided to bring it on with a different group of people here, then I wanted to get different opinions, so get the message out, because we have on our Monday night show, you got Barry Foote and Warren Brewster, 2 great baseball people on there to complement the group that we have, right, Tony? You and Eric and I and Candy, and you have a couple of former players that played in it. And that's how you check yourself in this business, okay, as a report card. If people are talking about what you mentioned on a show, podcast, whatever you want to call these things these days, and they're still talking about days later, you've done your job and you've done it well. And that's why we're talking about it again as more and more developments play out. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it later on at a later date, but it was just worth refreshing it, because there's aspects of that Kyler Tucker contract I'm going to get into at a later date, but I didn't want to do that today because there were so many other offseason developments I felt we had to get to leading into it. But we're not done talking about this by any stretch of the imagination. So great stuff. So, all right, as we get ready to wrap up the show, Katie and I will be at the Senior Bowl. Katie, are you looking forward to this challenge that we're about to undertake at Mobile, Alabama? It could be a little bit colder than we're anticipating.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We've never covered the Senior Bowl. They have NFL coaches coaching these seniors that are looking to impress people to get into the NFL. We have recently heard that Reuben Bain Jr. is going to be there. Akeem Mesidor is going to be there. A lot of NFL prospects. So I look forward to going to cover it. I just hope the weather holds out, especially for game day.
Well, Stuart, good to have you back on for sure. I always like getting your information and takes on Mets. Anything else you want to add that we haven't talked about, Stuart, that you'd like to get off your chest?
I know. There was the Hall of Fame voting this week, and we have 2 new members, Carlos Beltran, who looks like will be wearing a Mets hat. So I just wanted to throw that in, as well as Andrew Jones. So it was rare. 2 center fielders, where center fielders hadn't always been a popular choice for Hall of Famers. So 2 get in this week.
Yeah, they all had similar careers.
And we will be talking
Mattingly.
more about that in the future.
I just said,
we will be talking about Beltran and Andrew Jones as well in a future edition of Talking Baseball or 108 Stitches Baseball Talk.
They all had similar careers to Don Mattingly, which really irks me.
Okay.
Great peak.
What about you, Tony? Obviously, okay. Great show. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, no. I'm good. I'm just happy to be on Happy Talk Baseball with you guys.
We always enjoy having Tony. Obviously, Tony's emerged in our system as a really dynamite producer here for us. He's on 2-3 times a week, Stuart. So this guy here, you talk about our system, where we like to bring on people and develop them and get them in here. Everybody gets a turn to talk, so therefore we don't have a lot of people overlapping, which makes the chemistry real good. So with that, and obviously we know what Eric has been like. He's been phenomenal, and my goal is to get him in a press box, among other things. So with that said, that does do it for this edition of Talking Baseball, but we're not done yet. We're going to let Eric let everybody know how they get a hold of him.
You can follow me on my Twitter at SportsTeamNews, and you can check out my blog at BellyOutSports.com, where I'm writing about all things Milwaukee Brewers. And if you think I don't like your team, I probably don't.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, you can get me Talking Game on all social media, Talking Game 1, and YouTube Tony Talking Game, live episodes every Wednesday, 3:30. And in about an hour, we're going doing wrestling, 2 Raw for SmackDown, 1 p.m. Saturdays.
Great. There you go. Well, you'll be there plenty of time. Stuart, please let everybody know how to get a hold of you. Stuart's an occasional contributor here on the network, and we're glad we're able to get have him share a little bit of our time here on this Saturday morning.
Thank you for having me. Stuart Hack, Hack Tax and Accounting Services. You can find me either or on any social media. No truth to the rumor I will be taking over as the new tax coach for the New York Mets. That's not going to happen, but I am a 6-time finalist and a 3-time winner of Palm Beach County's best accounting firm. So March 12th, we find out if I'm a 4-time winner.
All right.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck there, hoping that you are a 4-time winner. I know you do your job well, and you're always helpful when I need some information. But more importantly, I love working with you since I met you through Peter Ween as well. And Peter, I'm sure, is probably happy and having known that you and I are keeping our relationship going as well, talking baseball as well. All right, Candy, take us the rest of the way.
Yeah, Stuart, I was going to say, I hope you win. I know I voted for you a couple of all the time, every time. So it's awesome to see. Good luck. And then South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Talks about his 40-plus years in the sports industry and how it has evolved and changed. You have to go get your copy today. I will say it is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also an audio version available now as well. But to be honest with you, I mean, if you're an Audible person, I get it. Go get it, read it. But I will say that actual printed copy has pictures of Scott with a young Tommy Lasorda and a young Muhammad Ali. You'd miss those pictures if you go get it on Audible books. But it's a great book, great read. Go get your copy today. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Last but not least, if you see the red subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner, that means you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel. What are you waiting for? Click it, like us, share us, and then tell all your friends about it, and turn on the notifications so you're notified every time we go live. Also, go back to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. There's all kinds of other videos that we do when we've talked to different people, different players, different coaches, from baseball to football, so go check that out as well. Back to you, Scott.
All right, well, that does it for this edition of Talking Baseball. Had a great show in our first hour. We had Inside the Picture, we had Steve Ballesteri along with Marvin Powell III, myself and Candy. What a great time. And, of course, we were able to double it up today with Eric, Candy, Tony, and Stuart. And we look forward to having another Saturday edition in the not-so-distant future. But glad we were to get this in as we get ready for Mobile, Alabama. So we want to thank everybody for joining us on both the shows and hope everybody has a good weekend, and stay tuned for updates on our program on the network. So take care, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us, and thanks to this wonderful crew for being on with us the whole time. Much appreciated. God bless everybody. Enjoy the baseball. More to come. Thank you.